So my name's Kristen Snowden. I'm a licensed therapist and certified life coach, and these webinars are focused on exploring and tackling everything from severe acute relationship crises to addiction recovery to tactics, exercises, perspectives that can help you with your own personal growth. And so moving along in those lines, I think last month you guys heard that I released a new book with another person who's a contributor, Scott Brassart for sexandrelationshiphealing.com. We kind of wrote it for a lot of different reasons. I work in addiction recovery, and I'm not technically an addict. I don't identify as having substance abuse issues or extreme addictive issues. However, there have been seasons of my life where I have drowned mentally, emotionally, and really struggled with meeting life on life's terms, and found that of all my different outlets, spiritual outlets, therapeutic outlets, psychological outlets, they all ended up complementing each other. But at the season of my life, the 12-step concepts were kind of what struck me the most, that seemed the most palatable, the most approachable at the time. So, and I wondered at the time, why do more people not know about what we call the 12 steps? And I can explain those to you. And more importantly, there also seems to be such a strong response to the 12 steps, which, I'm finding more and more now that I have this book out, is some people are like, yes, it changed my life. I don't even know why you are espousing 12 steps. So I think it's really interesting to even talk about that, about the extreme like or dislike. To me, I kind of, the equivalent I have is it's almost like to religion sometimes. It's like people say, I hate organized religion. And it's like, well, did you have a really bad experience with this particular organization and this particular brick and mortar concept, and then it's kind of poisoned the entire water of everything spiritual and everything religious. So anyway, Tami and I were talking about good topics to discuss, and it is a new year, 2021, and we are all still in a world that we have no control of, and things just keep happening at us and to us. And I don't know about you, but I'm a type A control freak, and I'm constantly having to take deep breaths, remind myself that I'm not the one in control, and that I need to kind of look at my micro world of who am I, what are my values and goals, what are my priorities in life, who do I want to be and show up as every day, and what are the behaviors and choices that I need to make around that. And I think the best navigable tool that I used to come to those conclusions were the exercises that were involved in 12 steps. So we're going to start today by just kind of talking about generally what step one of the 12 steps. No, let's just start with the first step. But kind of helping you, for those of you who don't understand, the 12 steps was originally basically from AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. They kind of created them as a path to help people stop turning towards alcohol for coping and kind of turning towards these other facets of life, and kind of doing an inventory into their history and releasing shame and exploring their trauma, etc. And it's been quite successful. I know people would argue otherwise, but I work in the addiction recovery world, and the biggest piece of evidence to me is some of the most amazing, phenomenal people I've ever met or encountered in my life are in the 12-step recovery world. And I can't deny that. I can't deny the consistent evidence that they tend to be the most courageous people, the most honest people. And again, I know that there's exceptions to this, but I'm just saying from my general observation, they are still imperfect. They still struggle. But I just love the framework that they use to approach life. It's just kind of the personalities that I'm like, I want to go to there. How can I show up with that kind of courage every day? Those are the people that I've seen and I've encountered in addiction recovery. Yes, there are exceptions to that. So the 12 steps is generally, it's a list of 12 sentences essentially of suggestions, and they kind of principles, and they when you work the steps with sponsors, so people who have long-term recovery and have already kind of gone through and explored the steps, you seek them out because they're more experienced, and they kind of have you do some exercises, and I mean, my understanding, and Tami, you can chime in, every sponsor approaches them differently depending on what your particular issues are and your particular struggles are. You know, I hear lots of different stories and lots of different things that sponsors had sponsees do to try to work through their stuff, basically. Oh, and then the little caveat is, when you're talking about working 12 steps as an addict versus working the 12 steps as a non-addict, the metaphor we give is kind of the differences is the motivation and the severity of the symptoms. So the metaphor is, imagine if you had type 2 diabetes, and the doctor's basically saying, if you don't dramatically change your lifestyle, all facets, your stress level, your eating habits, your lifestyle, you will die. Versus someone who's just trying to, you know, eat healthier, go down a healthier path because, you know, they'd rather lose 10, 15 pounds. You can understand when it's life or death versus someone who's just trying to stay on the clean and narrow path. There's a little bit more wiggle room. So that's sometimes you'll see in the 12-step addiction world, there's a lot more concrete black and whiteness. You got to do this or else, you know, you must abstain entirely or else, because we're talking about life or death issues versus someone who's maybe in a season of their life and things aren't working for them anymore, and they're looking for a framework to kind of get out of their unhealthy habits and patterns. So with further ado, this kind of goes into more detail about that addict versus non-addict, what the 12 steps kind of do in conceptually, because it's not, when you say 12 steps, I think people actually think there's just these words on the board and you look up and I don't know, they come into you through osmosis. But most 12-step concepts are, when you're saying that, they're basically saying it's about attending meetings regularly, forming intimate, safe, non-judgmental connections with a community of people, and not just random people, but people who have suffered and struggled in the same way you have, so they know how to call you on your crap. You know, they've done it 65 times before. It's kind of no different than moms when they suddenly are these professionals and they're moving down one pathway in life, and then suddenly they have kids and all their priorities and everything changes, and they're trying to find their footing again. And so they'll find a couple new moms just like them to kind of go down that path with them, a safe, non-judgmental place where they can kind of be like, yeah, today I kind of hate my kids, you know, and instead of them looking at them like, oh my God, how dare you say that? Children are blessings and they're perfect. They could be like, yeah, I hated my kid this morning too. You want to hear what she did? So that's kind of the idea, but it's dealing with alcoholism or gambling or sexually acting out. Not to oversimplify it, but I'm just trying to give you a contextual understanding of what these 12-step communities are about. It's not just following these things written up on a poster. It's about forming community. It's about working with somebody. It's about an accountability structure. It's about a safe space to kind of walk into and be able to share anything and everything and feel safe. And I think that was the reason for it being anonymous initially, is because there was so much stigma around substance use or addicts that they wanted these people to find a safe place where no one was going to judge them and no one was going to kind of spread their stuff around to everyone. So step one for all of you is, we admitted that we are powerless over alcohol or drugs or sex, gambling, eating, shopping, some kind of addiction, and that our lives have become unmanageable. So for addicts, a common thing when we're in addiction recovery, Rob's, really great way of approaching step ones, we'd have them do step ones. It would be exploring 25 emotional, physical, spiritual, professional consequences of why the stuff isn't working. So he'd have clients sit down and say, 25, even though. So even though I told my wife I'd be monogamous to her and that I did make vows to keep my promises, I went out and had an affair. Even though I promised my wife that I was done acting out in this way and that I started recovery, I re-engaged with an acting out partner and met up with her, right? So what it is basically showing that even though I set out to behave this certain way, right? Even though these are my values, these are the promises I've made, these are the commitments that I've made, these were my goals professionally, or this is how I wanted to show up for my family. This acting out behavior, this unhealthy coping skill was able to take me out over and over and over again. And again, for addicts, it's pretty chronic and consistent. For non-addicts, I personally find that it's often a season of their life, right? So let's even say for betrayed partners, they may be a pretty stable, moving along in life to the best of their abilities, and then they uncover this huge double life. And so there would be, even though that I have prided myself on being emotionally stable or non-emotionally abusive, I find myself lashing out at my husband and telling him, saying these horrible things to him because I'm in a great state of pain right now. So it doesn't need to be this blaming, shaming, pejorative type process, but it's just helping you kind of understand, probe the pain, so to speak. Determine and better understand what is no longer working for you. You know, one of my favorite sayings, and you probably heard it before if you watch me consistently, is Glennon Doyle talks about pain as pain is a professor. You know, it's like a traveling professor. And the smartest thing you can do, instead of pushing away the pain, instead of numbing it, distracting it, raging it out, blaming it on someone else, is to actually take a minute and sit with it and say, what are you trying to tell me? What is no longer working for me? How do I want to respond to this pain? Is this behavior and these coping skills in line with my goals and values and how I want to move forward? Step one is just an invitation for you to stop, look, and listen and probe the pain of what has not been working for you anymore. And so we have some exercises to be kind of talking about, you know, just off the top of your head, what are things that are not working for you right now? What are things that you'd like to change? And even though, so a lot of my betrayed partners, they are victims in this time. Stuff is happening at them, to them. They didn't sign up for this life. So don't confuse this for, this means I'm the problem. And you know, it's not that. It's an invitation that despite the world collapsing around you, what about that is not working for you? What is the pain and the suffering and the consequences that you're experiencing, even though it might be external to you? It might be a COVID coronavirus pandemic madness, or your partner having an addiction problem. What is going on there? What have been the consequences of this? How have your coping skills been? Because the truth is when you've never gone through it before, your default responses to this pain and suffering are just gonna be your best bet. It's just going to be, you know, raging if that's most accessible to you. It might be distracting and numbing if that's been most accessible to you. But you have to stop long enough to say, are these coping skills that I'm using to deal with this difficult season in my life, are these in line with my values and goals? When I really step back in those calmer moments, is this how I want to move forward? Does this make sense? And step one is the first step. You can't tackle these problems and get to that better place of coping, of living, of meeting life on life's terms, kind of being that calm amidst the storm, until you first start exploring these things, probing the pain, probing the powerlessness that is showing up. That one of the really great questions to be asking yourself is, you know, do you find yourself talking to yourself regularly? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. If this happens, I'm never going to go there. Or I swear next time this happens, I'm going to behave X, Y, and Z, or I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And then you just find yourself not following through with that. That's not supposed to be a shaming thing. That's not saying you are a bad person. It's just noting that you're going to need a little bit more help now. You just need a little bit more help. One of the quotes that I like from the Alcoholics Anonymous book is around step one. It says, when I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to be. I can find no serenity until I accept the person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at that moment. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in this world as on what needs to be changed in me and in my attitudes. If you'd read this to me in my season of life and I had the ability to laser chop off your head, I would have done that. So I'm acknowledging that, hearing that sentence when you're in a state of suffering and you've been victimized and lied to, that sentence probably, or that quote probably pisses you off to no end. But further down the road, when this continues to beat you down, exhaust you, suck all your resources dry, this is ultimately what you're going to conclude, that I have no control of my partner's recovery. I don't know if he or she's going to pull their stuff together. I don't know if I'm going to keep my job in these circumstances. I don't know what are going to be the test results of that test that's coming back. I don't have control of this stuff. And even as I'm saying these sentences, the little toddler in me is like kicking and screaming. That's like, hell no, you have control. You can do this. You can go back to that formula and you can hustle and you can run on that treadmill and you can outperform this. So, I mean, I get it that these are tough sentences. Step one is not a one and done work. It is like, I need to sit with this and figure out what is no longer working for me, even though I might be the victim of what's not working for me, and really start probing the pain and figuring out what have been the consequences. So that's basically kind of the beginning 101 steps. It's just a very rough surfacing of what step one could be for you. But the real basic way that we would do it in our recovery centers, those 25, even though I meant to do this, even though I made this promise, even though I intended to be this way or show up this way, I did this 25 times. And then 25 examples of unmanageability. So that unmanageability is those physical consequences, emotional consequences, professional or educational career consequences, spirit. So I've stopped wanting to pray at night because I'm so angry at God. I yell at my children all the time. I am not showing up in the way I want to show up at work, and my work is suffering. I've stopped returning phone calls to my friends. That's the unmanageability part. So it's just kind of 25 of that and 25 of that to really, it can be really profound. I've sat in on a lot of step ones of people just listing these huge consequences. It just shows this cycle of insanity of, trying to do the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. But yet your 25 examples are showing every time you kept making yourself those promises, every time you swore it was going to be different, every time you're going to structure your life to be this way or that way so it wouldn't get this bad, and over and over and over and over again, you ended up being wrong. And it's not that you are bad or you're failed. It's that you need help. And that's what step 2 and 3 are about. And we're going to be talking about those. But one of the things that I love that Richard Rohr says about the 12 steps is that until you bottom out and come to the limits of your own fuel supply, so your best thinking, your best attempts, your best defenses, there is no reason for you to switch to a higher octane of fuel. You will not learn to actively draw upon a larger source until your usual resources are depleted. In fact, you will not even know there is a larger source until your own sources and resources fail you. So step 1 is actually the freedom of realizing that there is something greater out there, that you, to your best abilities, you have taken this as far as you could. But if you watch my webinars and you watch anything around sexandrelationshiphealing.com, you know we are not meant to go it alone. We are wired to need people, to ask for help, to lean on others. And step 1 is just the beginning of realizing that my best attempts, my best thinking, my default settings keep me stuck here. and that I need to give myself permission to start seeking more people, a higher power, a greater resource that I've not been able to give myself. So really, it's just an invitation. Um, and so that is step one, and I'm open for any questions that you have.
So what I found for me was, as you were reading that, I was like, this is where I'm at. It's like, it's a calming thing now. Now I know that I don't have to have control over this. It isn't all on me. It's a reminder of, if I just accept that there are other people, there are tools I can use. I don't have to control the world. I don't have to make it all right. I'm never going to do it right, and some things go like I want them to do and some things don't. And some people, I can get really caught up. And I have to back off, but there are people that call partners in pain and it brings tears to my eyes, addicts in pain, it brings tears to my eyes. But then they're like, yeah, but I'm not ready to do whatever. And I just go, oh, I hate when addiction wins. And I hate when, when, like the consequences of the behavior, that even those haven't caught up with them enough to go, I'm ready to accept help. I'm ready to look at doing things differently because my way hasn't worked. So for me, and I have to unfortunately remind myself often, acceptance is the key. I have no control over anyone else. All I can do is change my reactions. I can check my actions and reactions. That's all I can do. But that's also a gift. Like, I have learned in recovery that is a gift, that I have control over that. Even though I have no control over everything else, that is actually something that I do have a choice in, and me having choices is way better than me feeling like a victim of everything's happening to me. So the first question, thank you. It's always helpful to hear about step one. I agree. My struggle with step one is that in my mind, it feels like accepting powerless equates to giving up self-agency as well. I understand and accept that willpower is not enough to stop addictive behavior, but don't we also have to accept that we do need willpower and control to make changes in our behavior and recovery? My dad wrote me a note when I was going into treatment. And he said, you're a strong-willed person. This is, another one of those, everybody figures that out in about 5 seconds. And I remember I'm standing in the detox unit, like this is, I'm at the lowest point. And they've just dropped me off. Horrible, sad, scared. And I remember thinking, Dad, you don't understand. I have tried everything on my own. So I think that because I was willing to, so rather than willpower, it was for me to become willing to listen to others. And I get all kinds of calls of people going, I need to get control of this. And I'm like, it's actually I know it's like one of those, paradoxes, but it really is, if we accept that we don't have control over those things, but that others can guide us, the more I focus on controlling something, the more focused I am on, like if it's like, I'm not going to eat that chocolate cake. I'm not going to eat that chocolate cake. All I'm focusing on is the chocolate cake. If I'm focusing on other things and how I can be of service to other people and how I can do life differently, that was a game changer for me. So it really is one of the paradoxes, and it's the longer you do this, it eventually does make sense. So,
No, you explained it so well. It's that this concept that I got made fun of my whole life for being a control freak, like rule follower. And I was like, yeah, so, I'm winning. But the truth is that
at what cost?
Yeah, I was an asshole, and it was, and I also wasn't, I was deeply insecure. I did a lot of this out of my own, like trying to protect my fragile ego. And so I get what you're saying to the person that's commenting, that don't you need willpower and control to make changes in our behavior and recovery? But it's kind of like I'm making choices to realize I am powerless, if that makes sense. Is that my best thinking doesn't always work. And so I need to constantly consult and put it through kind of an accountability, like a board member. Like when you think about some of the most successful businesses are not a one-man show. We all try to be these one-man shows, but really successful businesses are made of board members and accountability structures. And there's the lawyers and the accountants, and it's an entire team of people, because one person is going to see it from one perspective and one facet, and they're gonna miss all the nuances. And so the best thing you can do is kind of humble yourself to say, my best thinking is not 100% accurate all the time. And I need to err on engaging other people, seeing their face expressions when I tell them what my idea is. And I start seeing 6 faces that are like, really? That's your choice? I think you're kind of insane. Then I need to sit and probe the pain and say, wow, I've pissed lots of people off doing this behavior, doing this thing, that maybe I need to err. Maybe I need to look to see if there's another resource, another manager that I can be consulting with. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, the person that put the question in, but it's this confusing, it's that the freedom that you feel when you realize that you're not in control, and the irony of it.
Well, and one of the things that was really helpful for me is, like, I didn't have control because my addiction was, like people talk about struggling with higher powers and things. And I'm like, my addiction was my higher power. I was doing whatever it demanded of me. And so it really, for me to accept that there is a power greater than myself. We'll get to that too, but that there are people that can guide me on this path, that, in addiction, and I hated this too, but, first thought wrong, that was like, people first thought wrong, well, that just tells you that, I've had this wonky thinking all my life, so first thought wrong, is there another way to look at this? Is there input I can get, and, like over time, it gets better. Like, I don't now think that every one of my first thoughts is wrong. If I'm in a reactionary, if I'm having a reaction, I check my gut, and honestly, then I call somebody that knows me and go, I'm thinking about this. And every time I've had to, in the past few years, reach out to somebody and going, I'm thinking about this, I know that it isn't my best thought, and I'm asking for validation, and somebody is affirming that, yeah, that wasn't your best thought, and there are other ways to do this, and have you considered this? And then I go, okay. Right. And my gut settles down, and so it's one of those where I could try to control everything, be really miserable, have the banged up head from banging my head on the brick wall, or I can go, my way hasn't worked. I'm choosing to be willing to look at doing things different. And for me, just choosing to be willing, felt like a choice. And it also gave me the freedom of hearing hope that other people had figured out a way to do it differently. So I wasn't alone. So,
and to help betrayed partners too, I guess I could give my story a little bit. Is so in the season when I learned about 12 steps and I was really trying to apply it, obviously I was in addiction recovery. So I was working with a bunch of people who've been working the 12 steps, and I would sit and talk to them so much. And I would, one of my friends, who had been in recovery for years and years, and he was kind of helps with the spiritual aspect of building whatever your higher power was, is, I was talking to him about how angry I was. My mom died of cancer. I was now separated, and I didn't get to see my kids half the time. And so all these things happened at me and to me, like things that I didn't choose, right? Like, so I could write this sad sob, but I didn't choose to pick up a bottle. Like, I didn't choose, right? Like, these things happen to me. I'm the victim. And he kind of pointed out to me, and he like pushed up against the wall, and he just pushed, and he said, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, Kristen. When I'm seeing you just sit in that victim state and you're so angry and you just want to blame everything. And I get it. Like, there's a season to be like, this isn't fair. I didn't sign up for this life. Like, I did everything right, and all this crap still happened to me. Like, why would I want to, praise a God that brought this on me? Or why would I want to ever love again if this is what happens? You get in that season of hurt, and that's okay. That's okay. So I'm not saying step one is about letting that all go and just say, oh, whatever, crap happens. But just acknowledging the pain and suffering that you go through when you keep pushing back on that wall, because the more you push back and say, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't supposed to happen. I hate God. I hate people. The more it's pushing back on you, and it degrades your soul, and it stops you from being able to move forward. And so that's kind of, I think, that control, letting go of the control and letting it, that mindfulness of letting it pass through you without judgment and all that kind of hippy dippy stuff that really pissed me off when people first tried to explain it to me. So I hear you if you're like, this lady's crazy, she needs to go back and like microdose her mushrooms. But like, I'm just telling you that this is stuff that I kept hearing and it seeped into my soul eventually.
I had somebody, I was doing the why me, unfair. I mean, stuff. And this person said, why not you? Mm-hmm. And I had no explanation. I mean, like, am I a good person, good, bad? What doesn't matter. It's like, bad things happen to good people, good things happen to bad people, so to speak, So I had to go to the why not me? Okay, all right, why not me? And I'm not in this alone. That was the hugest thing. Yes, something is happening to you, and there are support resources. You are not in this alone. There are people throwing out life rings. Grab it.
Amen.
The next one, my partner who has struggled with sex addiction previously has known the entire 2 years that we were together that I have this problem. And now, and I just now realized 2 weeks ago, how can I show him I want to change? I'm struggling to stop lying.
Right. And so this is a great session for you to sit in, because this is the first step. You are realizing 2 weeks ago, this way of living and this way of life of the lying and sneaking around and acting out is not working. And so there are a lot of options. You found this. So obviously you are resourceful, because we are a great place for people who are trying to recover from sexual acting out. So keep attending these groups. I would call or write Tami to find out if treatment is appropriate for you, to kind of sit down and dive into this deeper. There's 12-step communities that you could be attending. Everything is online right now, so it's even more accessible. I mean, put yourself around a bunch of other people that can kind of watch you and call you out on your stuff, because they've been down that path and they know how to live a life of recovery instead of living in the insanity cycle that you might be finding yourself in.
And I honor you for acknowledging that you know you're here, but also the lying. I mean, I hear this so often from partners too. It's like, I can almost, stand the acting out. It's the lying. So, Dr. Rob wrote a book, Out of the Doghouse, that talks specifically about, about that. And it's a process, and you aren't going to go magically, now I will never lie again. We learn to do things differently. There's 12 steps. We can't expect to, be in a very different place. I was talking to somebody, recently, and said, like he's in recovery, and he's at like kindergarten. I said, you can't expect to do college level work when you're at kindergarten. You're going to learn the tools, and then you're going to be in first grade, and so you're here. Great. There's lots of resources, just like Kristen said, on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. You can reach out to me, Tami, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com. Happy to, answer questions and provide resources and support. There are so many, Dr. Rob's Sex, Love, and Addiction podcast that Kristen has been part of. Great resources, just, all of those things are free. We've got some paid, support and resources as well. So I'm happy to I point people often, Kristen, partners, to your, I'm so grateful you have it, but the partner group that you've created. So KRISTIN'S.com, learn more about that. So there's hope. You're here. This is good.
Yeah. And the saying is, tell the truth and tell it faster, right? Because
Correct.
The idea is that sometimes we breathe in and we lie. We breathe out and we lie. It's just as part of, like, it's become such a part of who we are that it's just tell it faster. So a lie will come out about where I was 5 minutes ago or what I was thinking. And you just stop and go, nope, that wasn't accurate. I'm going to like rewind. This is the truth. And you just slowly practice that.
Oh, the first comment, thank you. That was super helpful. I find it challenging to explain this to my traumatized and betrayed partner. When I try, what she hears is that I'm trying to externalize responsibility and say that my behavior isn't up to me. I hear you, and I would invite your partner to listen to this. But I tell partners all the time, it's not an excuse; it's a reason. We are still responsible for our behavior, but again, just like the example I said, kindergarten to college. If you're in kindergarten with the program, you can't expect to be writing an essay at a college level. So it's a process. You will learn. If you haven't read Out of the Doghouse yet, now I've referenced it 3 times, highly recommend that you consider that as well. So
and that is partly what I wrote this for. It's for betrayed partners, not because it dives into betrayal trauma as much, but I feel like it allows, sometimes betrayed partners aren't able to participate in the 12-step recovery world themselves. So it provides them this framework to really understand what is being discussed, what is going on over there, what recovery should be looking like, right? Scott is a recovering drug and sex addict. And so he talks about his recovery process. So there it gives a reference point of, okay, even though you're not an addict, I'm the addict and I'm getting recovery. This is how I'm going to be working the steps, but this is maybe how you can understand conceptually what the steps mean for someone like you. And I really meant to be able to give it to both those parties to just give a better contextual understanding of what this process is going to look like.
Yeah, and we are responsible for our behavior. The 12 steps helps us clean up the wreckage of our past. That's why we write a 4-step. And for those of you that go, yeah, I'll get around to that eventually, you are holding on to shame and guilt and you're holding on to all the negative things that are more likely to make you relapse if you don't attend to, the first 9 steps are what helps free us of the, of the past. And so my invitation, when people go, yeah, I've been, going to the meetings and stuff, and I've been doing that for about a year, but, I'm on the first 3 steps. And I'm like I go, because I'm like, your chances of relapse are much higher if you don't attend to those things. And we do talk about, tell the truth and tell it faster. And Dr. Rob talked again on Monday night, about, there's whatever time frame, if it's the first 24 hours, you have to tell the truth. You come back and say, when I told you that I was going to take out the trash, I didn't, and it isn't just about lip service. I'm sorry. It's like, okay, next time take out the trash, don't lie about it. So, okay, next question. How do I stop fantasizing about romance? I have a manager who is completely unavailable, but I have such a huge crush on him. How do I just let this go? It wouldn't be fair to me or him to pursue it.
Right. So fantasizing, I mean, first of all, you already are understanding what's going on, because what I hear is that you are understanding the difference between fantasy and kind of this world that I've built up about who this guy is and what world would look like. And look, I'm assuming gender, so let me just say he or she is. Stop fantasying about romance. You're realizing that there's a difference between fantasy and reality. And so the answer to that is just to spend more time on that, right? You have a manager that you realize is completely unavailable, and yet you find yourself being really drawn to this person. How do you let it go? Is you spend more time in the reality of it. You spend more time. So gosh, you could even do a step 1 on this person, that even though I value someone who is emotionally intelligent, I continue to be attracted to a guy or girl who seems to have the emotional intelligence of a snake. Even though I swore that a relationship within a professional work environment isn't ideal because there can be an exploitive, unfair, imbalanced type of environment, I continue to fantasize about being in a relationship with my manager. Even though, right, so you can really, I'm already hearing that you're able to call yourself out on your stuff because you're owning that you struggle with fantasizing about a romance with somebody and that he or she is unavailable. So I know you have the ability to dive deeper into this. You just, the pain and discomfort and overwhelmingness of it is probably what stops you, because it just is probably been more a long-term chronic issue, that's like, wow, I'm going to really have to change myself if this is what the real patterns are that it keeps showing up. You might benefit from attending some Love Addicts Anonymous meetings, or Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous meetings. They're online, they're all Zoom. But that is something that might be helpful for you to really start talking about. The more you talk about why that person's unavailable, dig in. You've identified that person is unavailable for a reason. What is telling you that he or she is unavailable? Is it the way they behave with other people? Is it the way they've engaged with you? Is it the stories they've told you about previous relationships? Dive deeper into it.
Yeah, well, and I was thinking, is this a pattern for you that you you select people that are unavailable? Like, is there some intentionality that you're that being vulnerable with somebody who can be in a relationship is something that you avoid? So, is there something around that? Is this with some workplace romances are forbidden. So could the consequence, if you said something, you're going to lose your job, so play out, what is it and what is your past? Is this a pattern? Because then that's something to look at, is why do I keep choosing to be fantasizing about somebody who's emotionally or completely relationship unavailable, and what would keep me from connecting with somebody who is available?
Right. And you're awesome for being here and for asking this question and for calling yourself out on that. That is the honesty and the reality seeking that I look for in everybody. So I just really want to give you kudos. That's tough work.
Other
There's
questions?
a few books like Ready to Heal, I think, Kelly McSomething, and then McDaniel, and then that's getting out of addictive, unhealthy behaviors, relationships. And then there's that Ethel Varr's Love Addict that I thought is good. It's kind of Sex, Loves, and Other Drugs, I think is what it's called, but kind of talks about what recovery looks like from those things.
So we've got a couple more. I grew up in a family that was abusive and not nurturing. My brother never had a healthy relationship. He's now 50. Who can help him? Any information on that?
I usually assess someone's willingness to hear things. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, brother, I'm noticing this. Do you notice it too? Would you like me to help you find some resources, maybe like a well-trained and appropriate therapy? That's what I always suggest. Is it doesn't sound like you've broached this topic with him, but I usually just start with this is what I'm seeing from your behavior, from what's going on. How is this working for you? Would you like to maybe know about some resources and opportunities, some books, some meetings, some options to maybe that you don't have to live like this anymore? If it's like, no, get out of here, life's perfect, well, then he's kind of given you his answer that you can't change someone where there's like no willingness, and that it's not, if it's working for them, they're going to just keep doing it. I mean, even down to like alcoholism. They're like, yeah, it works drinking a pint of vodka every day, then they're not going to change. So you kind of have to assess their willingness, so to speak.
Well, and I hear you grew up in the same family. So I would invite you. So I was thinking Enid Gray has a podcast on on sex, love, and sex, love, and addiction. There's too many on that podcast.
Don't ask me for help. I don't know.
sexandrelationshiphealing.com. You'll find it, or email me. But she did one, Neglect the Silent Abuser, and the book is listed on the resource pages of our websites too. But like, I hear that, and I'm wondering if you listen to that and read that book, if you go, wow, this really resonated with me, brother, this may be something useful for you. I mean, because then you're kind of sharing resources from your standpoint without it being you need help. If it's like, wow, this really helped me, I thought of you, that's a different place than pointing the finger. So that may be helpful, but you also grew up in that, so I'm glad you're here. But there's support. yeah, our treatment program is for men with sex addiction, intimacy disorders, which never having healthy relationships is par for the course on that. So I have trouble in relationships. Who can help me? A lot of abuse. Yeah. So again, email Tami, Tami at seekingintegrity.com. Let me know where you're located, because all the professionals need to work within their state licensing. So let me know where you're at, and I'll do my best to help you find the resources. But you're here, and there's all kinds of resources on this site too. So.
And also, like I said, these 12-step communities, check them out. Like someone was asking what's the difference between like love addicts, sex addicts. So that's the other question. And I can talk about both of these. Mm-hmm. Every area has different 12-step communities, different, right? Like there's SA, and then there's SAA, and then there's SPLA. And so I don't know, maybe Tami, you have a different opinion, but my opinion is look up the meetings. They're all under the categories of intimacy disorders. All of these people are struggling with healthy ways of connecting with other people, with healthy sex, with healthy emotional connection, with healthy all the above. The symptomologies might be different, right? One might be sexual anorexic, so meaning like I have no relationships entirely, or I'm a fantasyaholic, whatever your terms are. So meaning I like to spend more time in the fantasy of what someone might be rather than actually knowing them or showing up in my authentic self in the relationship. Or I might just prefer to have sex with prostitutes or spend all day on porn. They're all under the umbrella of intimacy disorders. So check out the 12-step communities or the therapists who help in all those kind of categories. I hope that helps you understand, right? It's like Sex Addicts Anonymous, Love Addicts Anonymous, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, Sex and Porn Addiction Anonymous. Like there's so many of them. What do you want? I mean, anything else?
And sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Like
right.
People get overwhelmed by the website, but we have all this information. So under resources, you'll see the list of 12 steps, and you can click on the links and find out which is best for you.
Yes.
And even if you go to one, so let's say you pick SLAA, you go to one meeting and you go, oh, that was such a turnoff. Go to another, because every meeting, like my home group, I love, but I could go to other meetings, and I actually do. And, those are, like those will be a meeting or whatever, and I'll get something out of it, but I don't connect in the same way. Every meeting has a personality. So even within the SLA, SA, SAA, whatever, they all have different characters that show up. So don't let one meeting sway you one way or the other. And this talks about anxious attachment style. We talk often about attachment wounds, and on the fourth Wednesday of the month, Troy Love does his is about attachment wounds. For men, he has the Friday morning drop-in group is about attachment wounds. He has a workbook, Finding Peace. There are so many resources. It can be overwhelming, but that's what we, and regardless of whether you're acting out is, sex and porn, or it's, eating, or it's alcohol and drugs, Dr. Rob and I have talked, about attachment wounds and intimacy disorders. No addict, I don't care what form it takes, knows how to do relationships, knows how to do intimacy. That's exactly what we're, running away from. So, we all have to, regardless of how it plays out for us, learn how to do things differently, and healing those attachment wounds. While it can be painful, like you said, digging into the pain, that's how we move through this. You can't just shove this stuff up on a closet shelf and go, oh, all good. That's what addiction does. So we have to be willing to look at it. But it's like bringing something out into the light and you go, okay, that was really bad, but it's way less, I thought it was, the whole size of the room. It's like this, and I can manage that, especially with help. And there are good professionals. I mean, there are great professionals, we work really hard to refer people to the right, kinds of help so that you can heal these wounds. And, I'm living proof. KRISTIN'S living proof that, we can heal, we can move forward in a different way. So,
yeah. And the last thing someone's saying is asking the difference between like love addiction, fantasy addiction, sex addiction. I actually just, I will this week release kind of an online course, because that's one of my most common questions is the whole, like, what's love addiction, sex addiction? How are the different ways that these show up, attachment wounds? So, I mean, you can check that out, but you're going to read different material and get different answers. But I guess the quick one is everyone has their own acting out pattern. And what I'm hearing you say is you just kind of have to acknowledge, one person, it's, I go to prostitutes for a reason, and really it's like with probing, why do I choose to go to prostitutes instead of going on dates or forming intimate relationships with people, or I choose to engage in camming or pornography. Why? And so it's all under the same umbrella because it's the same kind of foundational problems, intimacy disorders, but the acting out behavior can be patterned in different ways. Does that make sense? There's alcoholics who drink every single night, and then there's alcoholics who just binge every 5 days for 2 days. And then, and there's different eating disorders. It's all the same stuff.
Yes. Yes. If it's causing your life a problem, it's a problem, whether, you only drink alcohol once a month, but that weekend that you drink, it's just like, all bets are off. So there's a question, what can my partner do about my lying while I work on my way to honesty? I would encourage you to say, I have a problem with lying. I own that I have a problem with lying. I'm going to commit to you that I'm going to come to you when I lie. I'm not going to say that I won't. I'm going to come to you within 24 hours. The first time, I bet it will be at 23 hours, 59 minutes, or 24 hours, 1 minute. But hopefully the next time it will be, 23 hours. I mean, and then it can be 5 minutes ago, I lied to you, I mean, it's just showing up. It's not about what your partner can do. It's what you can do, to step into that space and go, I know I'm going to lie, but I'm going to do my darndest to own up to it.
Yeah. There's also, I mean, the polygraphs, right? There's a reason why they have those like structured disclosures, and some people are okay with them. Some people are not. Some people believe in them. Some people don't. But there's also those structured people who are tired of their partners lying, and that's a main issue. And they themselves realize they have a lying issue. They'll set up these structured disclosures or like polygraphs because they find it keeps them in line. Like they keep in mind, oh, in 3 months, he or she's going to ask me specifically, have I lied about any of these things? Have I lied about X, Y, and Z? And it keeps them at the forefront of their mind to remember that this has got to stop. This pattern's not working. So,
and often it's like, I lied to you 5 minutes ago because I was afraid I was going to hurt you, or I was afraid you were going to be mad at me, or whatever. Own why you lied, just didn't want to deal with your attitude, whatever. Own why you lied. And then my experience has been, while a partner is not happy that you lied, when they start seeing that you're willing to show up and tell the truth, most of the time they figure it out anyway. So it's just a matter of you're going to get caught, and that's, adds on to the betrayal and adds on to the hurt. So when we learn that, the consequences are less for owning up sooner that we lied and trying not to, it's like at some point I go, I don't want to lie because I don't want to have to go make amends. I don't want to have to go do that. I mean, it's just easier not to lie.
Or for me, I don't want to feel like crap about myself and have those voices in my head saying, see what a piece of crap you are. I knew it.
Exactly.
See?
Yes.
That's why. That's why I'm truthful.
Yes. It's just a lot easier to just tell the truth. Even when it's painful, it's a lot easier. So, well, thank you all for being here. We'll be back the second week of February, and we look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you, Kristen. And for those of you, one more time, it's Life Anonymous on Amazon. If you buy it, like it, write her a review. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm glad you all joined me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.